Joseph sat on the edge of the boat, looking across what was perhaps, maybe, possibly, once a lake. No more, just a crater in the ground, possibly left over from some asteroid striking their planet at one point. However, as he sat upon the boat, a boat teetering and tottering atop of a great big shard rock like a finger sticking out of the earth, he looked across, and upon the other side was his grandfather, who faithfully and dutifully had his pole out with a line sunk into the mud down below. Um, how long do we do this? Joseph asked. His grandfather says, for a couple hours. It's always good to fish. You need to remember, when one fishes, they don't actually ever expect to catch anything. You just fish for the memory of the sport. It's a good thing to do, and it's something that we always do. And true enough, that was something that they had always done. They had always fished in silence for hours and hours, waiting for a fish to bite, never expecting. And their expectations made it a good day because their expectations were met every single time. After a while, the sun hung in the middle, as if staring down, waiting for the ground to speak. And if the ground did not speak, everything was silent. Only the wind, chapping and furrowing the ground, making it extra dry. Grandfather leapt off his boat, shimmied it down the side of the rock, Joseph beside him. Grandfather then reached into a plastic bag, pulled out a silver spoon, and placed it into the mouth of Joseph. Joseph, without warning, took it and dutifully held on to it for as long as possible, and then tried to suck whatever moisture was left in the ground. He then blew out the dust and looked up and says, Grandfather, why do we have to do this every time? We need to get any amount of moisture into our bodies as we can. You know, our bodies need moisture, and it's an absolute cruelty of life that there isn't much to be had. But what is ours, and we need to hold on to it tightly. With that, the grandfather drug the boat back to the shoreline. Not much of a shoreline, really, just a dust rim. And then, stepping over the dust rim, walked into their small town. And there, a sound could be heard, bouncing off the great mountains that surrounded their town. What was that? Joseph asked. His grandfather said, nothing. Pay no attention to it. Probably the wind, nothing more. But I really did hear something. It's nothing more. And it was one of the first times that he had ever seen his grandfather sore, slightly angry. Joseph's mother came out and saw the two, and saw that the expression changed into a ragged and dogged anxiety, that then was stifled only back to a quick smile, and the grandfather darted off. Joseph's mother came out and said, How was fishing? The same as usual. That's kind of like how Grandpa likes it, she said. We'll be getting you some supper soon. It'll be wonderful. We have meat, we have vegetables, and they'll all be baked, and they'll all be wonderful. She then went back into the house. And then, coming around the corner as if following a cue of an actor of a great play, came a man wildly dressed. That's the best way I could describe it, really. Wild. One color did not match the other, as if it was deliberately including every single color you can think of, and then even some you had never even thought of, all within stripes or spots or jagged lines or crosses or X's or O's or boxes, all in this crowd of a jacket, a mob of a pants, and a murder of a shirt. And there, standing as if a second sun, a tall, lanky man came out, playing the harmonica. How you doing, Joseph? How do you know my name? Oh, I know quite a many things. No time for that. We must go on a mission. But my mother. It's okay, Joseph, his mother said, as if she had followed up on a conversation earlier. Her voice was stilled by the surrounding dry wood of the house. Come, 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 come. Your mother said it was okay, and it's all up to you. Do you want to go on an adventure? I just went fishing. Do you want to go on an adventure? Joseph thought about this. And one thing that he had a shortage of was adventures. Sure, he said, not really believing what was in store or that anything different would come about. The wild man took Joseph up to the side of the mountain. They zigzagged across rocks sticking out like bottom teeth to a wild animal. Up, up, up they went to the top of a mountain. And there at the very top, within an hour and a half hike, they looked to the other side, a sight that Joseph had never seen in his town. And that was a crater, but this time the crater was filled with crystal blue water, smooth as glass over the top, undisturbed, untouched. And he could tell that it was a purity to it. And some points you could even see all the way down to the bottom. What is that? Joseph had asked. The wild man said, That is the mission. He then scurried around a path that had been once trod, once used, once enjoyed, but now had given to disarray, of a clumsy collection of weeds and flowers and loose stone. This pathway then led them to a great big stone structure, and the stone structure stuck out as if it was an arm to an even greater structure, which was a great tall dam that shot all the way into the water as if seeking to cut it, and sever it in half. They entered into the large arm of the building, and there were a group of people chanting, chanting, chanting. The words no longer were in any sort of language that Joseph could pick out, just mumbles and drones, devoid of any sort of passion or empathy or life. They chanted as if the same cadence that his grandfather had about fishing. What are they talking about? Joseph asked the wild man. The wild man answered, They're singing about how wonderful it is to have water, how wonderful it is to swim, how wonderful it is to ride the currents and to take it wherever you decided to go. But they look even more dry than the people in the village. Yes, but here's the difference. These people have the water. These people enjoy the water, and these people have dammed the water. And they are just as dry as your people. The people who have never, ever, ever touched water. They took the hallway down towards a great big room filled with levers and knobs and wheels. Now, here's what I need you to do. This is the mission. This is the adventure. Take this wheel and spin it. Spin it and spin it. What's going to happen? Everything's going to happen. Everything, Joseph. Everything will happen. Could you be more specific? I dare not. Joseph hesitated, kind of trying to wait for something, anything to explain this moment. However, the old man saw his anxiety and said, Joseph, I'll tell you what will happen. The water that is over there will come down there, and the people who have it here will have to share it with the people down there. This water does not run out. Makes a dam kind of foolish, doesn't it? It's a silly idea. Nonetheless, both sides will have water. And you can fish, and you can swim. This is what I mean, that once you pull that wheel, everything will happen. Suddenly, Joseph started to pull the wheel. Suddenly, Joseph started to give a crank, and the wild man began to play. The water waited an impossible 5 seconds before it decided to leave the lake, rush down, a glorious waterfall, cascading upon the dry ground and the rocks. An explosion of dust followed, as if a final surrender to the water. Soon, the dust and the water merged into mud, and mud was everywhere. The water then cascaded, impossibly turning right. Water doesn't do this. And headed straight towards the main street of the village. At that moment, Joseph followed the trail down to see the mayhem that had come from this deliverance. Once he came to the downtown area, he saw people jumping in the water, splashing, spilling, swimming, reaching in and pulling out fish out of the water, kissing them and throwing them back down. Joseph's heart was full, along with the town, with water. The impossible had happened. Indeed, everything was taking place. Rounding the corner was Joseph's grandfather, a surly expression and an anger. Grandfather, he said, we can go fishing. No, we can't. Everything's ruined. Don't you see the water? Water will carry the fish. The fish we can enjoy. Fish are not here. Water isn't here. This isn't happening. This isn't happening. This is not happening. And he stormed off, trying to find tall, dry ground. Not understanding this, he saw his grandfather leave, and then coming around the corner was his mother, who jumped in the water and began to splash. She quickly grabbed Joseph's arm and pulled him into the water. Joseph, now completely wet, it was all over. They began to play and dance and laugh as the water overtook the town. The strange wild man came around the corner and began to play. He began to sink into the water. Slowly, his waist disappeared, his chest disappeared, his shoulders disappeared. Only that remained was a smile. The wink he gave to Joseph and said, share, my boy, share.